After recently travelling to Mount Molloy, we decided to do a little research on the town. Mount Molloy is situated in the Mareeba Shire, 104 kilometres northwest of Cairns in Far North Queensland. Its population in 2016 was 254 according to the census. It is an historical town that was named after Patrick, also known as Paddy Malloy, who discovered copper there beside Rifle Creek in 1885. There is a monument in the town to his memory, and the inscription says, "In memory of Patrick Malloy, 1840 to 1923, a worthy son of Aaron, pioneer, teamster, miner and grazier, tested and successfully worked copper mines which led to the founding of Mount Molloy in 1896, the Green Mound first sighted by Cudahy in 1885. Buried in Mount Molloy Cemetery is a well-known pioneer of the North Queensland goldfields, namely the Palmer River in 1873 and Hodgkinson goldfields in 1875. His name is James Venture Mulligan, and we will take a look at his grave later in this video. After looking at some old local papers, we discovered that Mount Molloy was once a thriving settlement that was primarily the town of the Mount Molloy copper mine, set up by Patrick Malloy in about 1885. The mine had various owners, and around 1904 a smelter was installed. By 1907, the Mount Molloy Mining Company had some 250 men employed at the mine and smelter. The railway arrived at the smelter in 1908. In 1913, John Michael Johnson set up a sawmill. The ruins are still there today and can be seen across the road from the general store. The boilers, said to be one of Queensland's only bricked-in boilers, operated the high-pressure steam Sentinel engine. A ship's winch was used to operate the derrick, which unloaded logs from the railway wagons. The sawmill employed 50 workers and continued to operate until 1962. In the early days, Mount Molloy consisted of two townships known as Minetown and Smeltertown. In 1914, Smeltertown had one hotel, known as Smelter Hotel, and 4 shops, which included a butcher. There was also a School of Arts hall, and between the two towns was a school and a hospital. The mine closed in 1986 due to rising costs and low commodity prices. Whilst researching Mount Molloy by the way of old newspapers, we found a couple of stories that are of interest. Firstly, we'll have a look at James Venture Mulligan's grave. Well, we're here in Mount Molloy, Far North Queensland, and we're standing in the main street. That's the monument in memory of Patrick Malloy, the first man to find copper in Rifle Creek, which is down the hill there, and that's the pub behind him that James Venture Mulligan owned and broke up a fight in and resulted in his death. So we're here at the Mount Molloy Cemetery, which is in the Mareeba Shire, Far North Queensland. So it's fairly, it's probably about a mile out of the town on a side road, so it's not obvious when you're driving through town where the cemetery is, apart from the sign on the road. So we're here today because we're going to check out the grave of James Venture Mulligan, a pioneer of the North Queensland goldfields, Hodgkinson goldfields, Palmer River goldfields. He also owned the pub in town for a period of time before he died, but he's definitely known as a famous pioneer of the early Queensland goldfields. He has a highway named after him and a river named after him, I believe. A little willy wagtail there jumping around on one of the gravestones. There's quite a few anthills out here too. Made their homes near the edge of some of the graves. Not a big cemetery by cemetery standards. Some newer gravestones as well as some older gravestones here. But the one we're here to see is down the back. So I'm walking down to the back end of the graveyard here where we find the grave of James Venture Mulligan. It's the one here with the white fence around it. Has 3 plaques on it, a headstone and also 2 other plaques. The original headstone says, "Sacred to the memory of James Venture Mulligan, prospector and explorer, died at Mount Molloy aged 67 years. Rest in peace," erected by a few old friends. It's very hard to see, but James Venture Mulligan was from Ireland, and he has shamrocks right around the top of his headstone there, which I will try and zoom in on, but they're really difficult to see. There's also a plaque down here at the very front of the grave, which says, "Commemorating the centennial anniversary of the death of James Venture Mulligan, prospector explorer. It is not so much how a man dies, but how he has lived, in loving memory." So that was after 100 years of his death. They would have laid that plaque. Looks like someone's been here in the not too distant past and put down some flowers that have started to die off. But the plaque says, "James Venture Mulligan, 1837 to 1907, born Rospreland, County Down, immigrated in 1860, found Palmer River gold in 1873, Hodgkinson River gold in 1875, which led to the establishment of Cairns and Port Douglas. He mined copper at Mount Molloy in the 1890s, married in 1903, bought the Mount Molloy Hotel in 1905 and died 24th of August 1907 from injuries received when he tried to break up a fight in his hotel. He had no children." Sad way to die for somebody that had lived such a great life. I do have some other information about James Venture Mulligan with me. I did a little bit of research and looked up some of the history. It tells me on Wikipedia. There's several sources for information, but I just thought I'd pick Wikipedia because it's available to everyone. It says early life. Mulligan was born in Drumgoolan, County Down, and immigrated to Australia at the age of 21 in 1860. He settled at Armidale in the British colony of New South Wales, where he became a butcher and a publican. While residing there, Mulligan became involved in gold prospecting at the nearby Rocky River diggings. In 1867, Mulligan ventured north to the colony of Queensland to further pursue aspirations of fortune from gold diggings. After mediocre success at Gympie, Mulligan went to the Etheridge goldfields in the early 1870s. From there he later led a group to find payable gold on the Palmer River in Far North Queensland, which had been reported by William Hann. On the 30th of June 1873, despite the local Aboriginal people attempting to burn down their tents, the group returned with 102 ounces of payable gold. Mulligan reported his find on the 24th of August to the warden at Etheridge Goldfield at Georgetown, and the information was widely published in the press shortly after. By early 1874, Mulligan returned to Palmer to find 3,000 diggers there beset with problems like potential starvation, large biting flies, and the Aboriginals defending their territories. Mulligan suggested that 4 parliamentary native police camps be set up to clear the area. The Palmer area was later overrun by more than 30,000 prospectors, many of whom were Chinese. Mulligan, being supportive of providing privileged status to the miners of European background, became a principal organiser in anti-Chinese movements. In September 1874, Mulligan led a prospecting expedition to the southeast of Palmer, a journey where he named the Hodgkinson River and Mount Molligan. In 1875, he was awarded £1,000 for opening the Palmer goldfields and appointed to lead a government-sponsored prospecting expedition. The expedition covered the assessed and extensive region for colonial exploitation, with Mulligan naming multiple rivers and landmarks. During this exploration, Mulligan found tin ore around the headwaters of the Herbert River. In 1876, he returned to the Hodgkinson River and found gold, which triggered a rush to the Hodgkinson goldfields. Mulligan lived at Thornborough on the Hodgkinson goldfield for a number of years while still maintaining prospecting pursuits. In 1880, he discovered silver in the Silver Valley west of Herberton. In the same year, Mulligan also conducted an expedition with Christy Palmerston to search for gold north of Palmer River. The mission was largely unsuccessful, but Mulligan was able to describe an event where Palmerston raided an Aboriginal settlement, killing men and kidnapping a boy for use as a personal servant. Another interesting stone here at Mount Molloy Cemetery is the one here that I'm walking up to now. It was a police constable. And this is, I'll read out what it says first, and then I'll tell you a small bit of the story. It says, in memory of Constable William John Cremin, registered number 1229. Born County Cork Island, 12th of June 1888. Died Mount Molloy, 3rd of January 1917 from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Now, I did happen to look this up in Trove and read the original. The whole court transcript is actually on Trove, which is very interesting. I will leave a link at the bottom of the video if anyone wants to go and read it. But it talks about the fact that he was at the Smelter Hotel. Mount Molloy back in those days had 2 hotels. One was the National Hotel, one was the Smelter Hotel. And he was at the Smelter Hotel one morning drinking with one of the local men, and then he went off to one of the bedrooms where he knew there was a rifle hanging, and he shot himself reasonably early in the morning before lunch. And there was a rather large investigation into his death. It was said that maybe he was suffering depression because his mother had passed, and I think 2 brothers had been killed in the war, and he was a long way from home, this man. So, you know, we maybe didn't acknowledge back in those days how many people did suffer from some sort of mental illness like depression or anxiety and things like that. So yeah, I will put some more of the story into the video when I get home, but it's just an interesting story, and it really sort of touched me to think that this man was out here in Australia all alone and his family was just dying, and obviously he felt that he had nothing left to live for. So here he is with the Queensland Police Force. Obviously he had no family here, but the Queensland Police Force have actually put a plaque into his remembrance at the cemetery where he's buried. Interesting grave site here. This is obviously a soldier. It was Patrick Joseph McNamara. Died in 1939, so that would have been the First World War. But the interesting thing is, check out this ant's nest that's made its home here on the back of the headstone. Some very industrious ants. It's obviously quite sheltered too because of the leaning up against the headstone. I have several holes there I can see them going in and out of. They're being very industrious. Imagine the amount of chambers that are in something like that. So this is the old sawmill, the Johnson Sawmill, Mount Molloy. I think they hired about 50 men when they were in operation. And these are the brick areas, the old boilers. And from what I've read, they're the only bricked in old boilers in Queensland. They're very interesting. Some nice plants growing out the top there. So that ends our visit to Mount Molloy Cemetery. Now talk about James Venture Mulligan and a little bit extra about the Mount Molloy settlement. We'll be heading over to Thornborough to do a video on the Thornborough Cemetery, which is the town that James Venture Mulligan lived in for several years while he was in the Hodgkinson goldfields area. So if you like our videos, please like and subscribe, and we will head off to do our next one. Also, if you want to contact us and let us know of any cemeteries in Far North Queensland that you might like us to visit and actually have a look at some of the graves, or a grave in particular, we'd be more than happy to do that on our travels. So if you drop us a line on our email address at historysleepshere@gmail.com, we can always see if we can accommodate that request for you. Thanks for watching.